Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning on this very chilly Thursday, November, central Pennsylvania morning. Uh, it, if you can believe it, a week from now, it will be Thanksgiving. I have no idea where the year went, but here we are. And thank you for being here with us this morning. Want to say thank you to Nick with One to One for joining us this morning for our today's tech session to learn more about One to One. I'm excited. Also want to thank all of you for carving time out this morning to join us for today's session. And then we have an investor joining us on today's call. So I want to give a shout out to that investor as well. Penn State Harrisburg, thank you, thank you, thank you for your support. You are the reason that we can continue to do great and wonderful programs like these. So without further ado, nobody dialed in this morning to hear me talk. So I'm going to be quiet. And Nick, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Take us away.
Perfect, perfect. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Penn State, for the sponsorship. We appreciate you very much. Today, I'm going to work just on a subject. I'm Nicholas Paulukow, CEO of One to One. We've been established since 2001, and we were founded based on some principles that I'm going to get into today. But really, one area, just to give you an understanding, is we're an organization based on creating a system of journeys through and empowering and educating our customers. Now, one would say that's really interesting. You're a technology company and you talk about empowerment and education. What we found over the many years of working with executive teams over the years is education was a major component to their success, meaning that when they were not empowered and they were not educated, they didn't make good informed decisions or any decisions at all. So, just a quick brief on us, and then we're going to get into a subject. But basically, kind of what we call our client journey is built on consultation, implementation, and management. And number one, the consultation side of things is really just an evaluation, understanding where you're at, what is happening, and how that's built within your organization, creating some action, and then creating, risk reduction. Sounds really boring and really laborious. And we're going to get into kind of a little bit more about who we are here in a second around kind of this framework. But really, the main reason of showing this slide is just showing that there is an essence of education and empowerment through this entire technology process. And I'll come back to this in a minute. But really, what we're really trying to do is put human back into the technology experience by driving data-proven responsiveness through that with a team model. And what does that mean? Technology is changing. We've been established for, many, many years, and really the empowerment has been driving businesses to use technology as a tool to improve, grow, and develop, right? So I could sit here all day and talk about all these really cool technology services and products, but we really feel that we're here and have been established, to create that, education component to help an organization grow and develop. And so I'm going to show you a component of that today. But what I really want to do is I want this to be as interactive as we possibly can. If you want to interject, you're not going to hurt my feelings. We're going to get into a subject of going over some of these components. We as an organization formally is known as an MSP and a cybersecurity or an MSSP organization. We are our target market that we work in is enterprise and mid-market. What does that mean? We are concentrating on working with large law firms, manufacturers, distributors, service-based organizations. And we do that through fully managing the technology and the technology systems, process, and security, or in a co-managed relationship where we are providing a component of that service for an entity. Okay. Um, so how do we go about that? We exist to educate and empower those that we serve, and that that education comes into our core values. We hire, fire, train, and reward based around these core values. Why is that important? And why are you hearing this in a technology presentation? It's really important for us to really be on the same page to those that we serve. And we do that by leading with a moral compass, being servant minded, putting we before me, and the status, going beyond the status quo. It's really core to our values, kind of in this serving mentality. Now, When we talk about maturity in our business and those that we serve, we found that there's three different types of people that we may serve. Those that are in a journey that look at IT as a possible necessary evil, those that find it important but it's expensive, and those that find it as a critical, part of their business. One thing that's really educational here is there is providers that fit within each of these tiers of this triangle. I think it's really important to understand that when you're looking at technology or providers, they're not one size fit all, and they all fit and serve a different market and also serve and fit a different area of that market, right? So many times where we get involved with an organization is where this dotted line is, right? They've gone from, IT is an expensive resource, but they're utilizing it as now a critical area of investment. It's a different mind shift and it has a whole different level of process and organization around it. Not that we can't serve others in this triangle. However, it's really important to understand that how you present and work with each of these different levels is completely different, right? Communication is completely different. What they're trying to achieve is quite different as well. So, if you take away anything from today, if you're a buyer of services, it's really key to utilize this type of triangle to do a significant amount of identifying questions to how to interview through this process because each of these tiers have different abilities to serve you. And does that make sense to the group? Does anybody want to interject here? Some examples to kind of show you here is when you move up through this triangle, you're starting to also see organizations that aren't driving necessarily with technology. They're utilizing business practices and business people to present and to review. And we're generally speaking to C-suite organization, the CFO, leadership teams, and we're talking about where's the business going and what needs to be driven to get them to the success. And then we utilize how are we going to protect that data, but how are we going to utilize technology to drive you through that? The bottom of the triangle is almost survival, right? I'm really here to try to survive, get through the day to day. I'm trying to grow my business, and it's really important. I just need to get through there. I don't have established, financial wherewithal to be able to be that investment, right? So, one area of empowerment and education that I'd love to share with you today, with the small amount of time that I have, is to talk about a framework. There's a framework that's being adopted through the community of IT, the federal government, insurance carriers and practitioners, and general risk assessors. So I felt that it was kind of timely to maybe show you what that is. So there is a cybersecurity framework that we call NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And what this does is it measures overall cyber risk, organizes things by function, and then rates them critical and high. And I'm sure if you've ever been in a planning session, everybody has a lot of great ideas. Everybody has things to accomplish, and you're wondering, what are we going to do? How are we going to get this done? And what has the best and highest use of our time? Has anybody in the call heard of NIST at all? You have? Okay. All right. Penn State. Very good. Um, and so why I talk about this subject is it leaves you with some empowerment when we leave. And why is it important? There is different levels of NIST. I'm going to go over the basic and the highest with the couple minutes that I have. But I want you to understand it is the gold standard in the United States. And if you start to understand this practice, you can apply it across all your mediums. If you're a mid-sized market business, utilizing this function will help you save money as well, because insurance carriers, if you're following this function, will also allow you to have the ability to save some money on those different insurances because you're following a practice that is working to keep you secure and safe. Okay. Why is it important? It is a framework, and the framework has multiple functions. I'll go over this briefly, but it's identifying risk, protecting it, detecting it, responding, and recover. I take this really simply and say, you own a house or a business and you've identified that it's worth protecting. That's identification. But you need to protect it. So you call an alarm company and you put an alarm in. They put a product in to, manage the security for your business. However, if you're not there and the alarm's going off, how do you detect that somebody has broken into your building? The detect area is that tool or system or monitoring that allows you to detect that problem or issue. And then response is hopefully we're not getting to a response, but in this scenario, it could be the police or the fire department. And then you work to hopefully never get to this recover event, right? So it's pretty simple in regards to talking about these functions, but it's a great way to organize the data. You will have this slide deck, so it gives you examples of what is in some of these areas of identifying, protecting, and detecting. But really, the reality here is trying to be preventative and educational ahead of time, right? Penn State is trying to protect confidential information, data, patient information. Obviously, they want to identify if there is someone that is not should be or should not be looking at information. Where's the data going, right? Identification is really key and really important. In the IT world over the many years, most of the technical people have spent most of their time responding to your issues and recovering when there was a problem. So this is a new concept for some that are in mid-market and small business, that identifying, protecting, and detecting is something that is not generally in their ball of wax, right? They're trying to learn this concept. Now, this assessment, and we provide this assessment as a conversation when we talk to a customer, it is the first thing that we do is have them complete this assessment, and it just rates you. Are you high, medium, and low? This is not to poke fingers. It's just to understand where are you at in your journey and help to understand where are you at from a critical and high perspective. And it allows us to immediately then create an overall plan, prioritize your goals, and then understand where we can create impact to help your business overall from a business standpoint. Now, what in any fashion of assessment, it has a control number, an issue, and why it's important. That's really key to getting your leadership team on the same page because it is sorting things from a critical and a high level, and then it's showing impact where it falls within the entity and allows us to have a great conversation to understand, is this important to us, and are we willing to solve for this problem, risk, or issue? Any questions there? Is everybody bored at 8:30 in the morning? All right. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the planning that goes along with it when you look at it. I'm a simple person, so I'm going to simplify kind of a chart here. If any of you have built a house or built a building, the first and the probably least exciting part is getting all the plans, the site work, the building drawings, and figuring out, can this thing really be built and does it stand up? Well, I'm going to simplify that a little bit here in the IT functions, but I'm going to consider it a house here, right? And number one, when we think about anything, we think about the foundation. Nobody loves the foundation. You dig it, you put it in, and it gets covered up. However, it is a critical component of how you operate, right? And why is it important? The foundation tells me is this going to be something that can support one level, or is this something that's going to allow me to add multiple floors to it? And I think it's really key that in planning, we need to understand that, right? And many times the foundation has components in it. Now, it's a really simple chart if I'm having a conversation with somebody and it says, I'll be really basic. Hey, listen, I have an accounting software that really does not run. It's not effective. I'm just going to buy a really high-powered computer to run it because that's just going to solve my problem. Well, in reality, that's really great and probably not bad thinking. However, the reality is have I looked at my foundation, is my foundation strong enough to handle what I'm trying to drive? I think many times this is where we fail. This is where we get frustrated. And as leaders, we get really, we're not educated here. So we're understanding, why is this failing? Why can't we get this done? Why is this implementation not working? And we haven't really looked at the foundation. It's got cracks in it. It cannot support the top levels of these functions, right? And so I think it's really key just to understand that there is some education. And although building a building sometimes takes quite a long time, that it is worthy to work on your foundation before you start climbing onto each of these floors. Is that oversimplified? Am I like offending anyone in explaining it in this manner? No? Okay. Well, let's talk about then from a technical standpoint. This is a really big list of items, right? So when we look at assessing someone, and I'm trying to simplify for this conversation, but when you assess something, you have outcomes and deliverables, and we have to solve for it, right? So although the NIST might have 200 and some controls that I have to look at, I have to create, remember, I have to identify, detect, and protect. And that generally is done by some sort of systems, tools, or process. And all I'd say is that when we start to look at each of these, they have weighted benefits, right? So we start at one and work our way down maybe to 15. It's only an example slide to give you an understanding that there is ways to solve for these things. And a provider that you're working with should be empowering you with education on why there is the importance of prioritizing these items and what are the impacts, right? And what are also the results. Okay. So when we go kind of into solutions, we simplify it into a process here, right? And any process of working through something, you need to assess your needs, right? Number one, this is not sitting around and assessing what tools that I have, but it's gathering what are my experiences? What are my pain points? What am I trying to solve in my business is really key, right? Am I trying to create more production? Do I have a manufacturing line issue? Do I have a security problem, right? It is first a discussion on a strategy and where the business is going. And then we're going to gather information, right? What do you have now, right? How is it configured? And then how do we fix things, onboard something, and implement something, right? And then how do we create a roadmap moving forward? It's really important. I know if you've ever worked with technical people love to solve problems and they love tools, right? We're fixers. However, from a strategy component, right, we have to go through each of these different levels to understand what are we really solving and what has the best impact for the organization. Now, if I look at some solutions to that from a conversation standpoint, there is businesses that are not like Penn State that can have these professionals on staff. And so from a mid-market standpoint, there are a lot of acronyms in this business, right? We call it Chief Information Officer Services, right? This service is more of an executive service that is really coming in to understand and evaluate your business, right? They're sitting at an executive level, understanding where you're trying to drive these functions, what risk are we trying to manage, what does the budget look like, vendor management, etc. And this type of service, and if you request that from your provider, if they have it, is really to drive this planning strategy for you, understand the ROI. Generally, this is done for companies that are in growth mode, right? They've done acquisitions, they're developing new systems. This service allows them to, hyper focus on how to build these strategies. Generally, they can oversee IT people in your business for a small fractional period of time and then implement solutions. This is a service that's generally charged at a monthly basis, and they're generally present within your organization, during that planning time, generally over like a 12-month period of time, right? So there's also other ways that you can protect yourself and you can hire an organization to help you implement projects or services. Although if you have no idea what you're solving for, it's going to be really difficult to do that. And then there's other ways to test things. So we have organizations that say, hey, listen, I'm great. Everything is great. Everything is fine. We have tons of people on staff. It's going to work. And there's this interesting term called pen testing. And pen testing basically is an acronym for, a test or a fire drill, right? What does that mean? Meaning that we actually can simulate an attack on your organization and an incident and do that from an external and an internal perspective and identify vulnerabilities. Where are we out of compliance? And it's a really interesting exercise because it does a full fire drill on your organization and your systems and understands where risk is so that we can solve it and identify it prior to it becoming a problem, right? On an everyday basis, I'm sure you're fished with wonderful emails that tell you to click on wonderful and great things. These tests simulate those actions as well as many others to help you identify your biggest risk, which are your employees, right? I'm sorry. They are your risk if they're uneducated, and this helps us identify and gives a really great data component on what to solve for, right? Lastly, from this example, I talk about a service that's called SIM. It's very technical, but basically, it's noting that this is a collection point where we can collect data from all technology devices in this diagram. And what it is doing is it's collecting threat information and it's digesting it at a center called a SOC. They're evaluating that data and identifying your risk in real time. Okay, what is happening? What is going on? What risk or what is, oh, hey, Johnny is in London? No, Johnny's in Lancaster. Well, why is somebody trying to log into Johnny's account in London, right? These are ways to identify and detect things prior to them becoming an issue, right? It is a service, you pay for it monthly, but it's allowing you to take all the sources of your technology and source it into an area of identifying threats and managing it. Why do I talk about these three? Well, in any risk situation, an insurance carrier, a business audit, what are they measuring all the time? Risk, right? If I can manage my risk and I can identify where my risk is, then my carriers show me as a less of a risk. And in turn, I am less of a risk to them. And in turn, I may be saving some money on the policy where they don't have to actually think of me as a high risk. And in essence, note that, wow, when I have a threat or an incident, I have to then protect the entire entity, right? I am oversimplifying some of these concepts, and I apologize because of the time. But really, hopefully, this is helpful. Some things to consider relevant to where you're mature in your business. A CIO will help you virtually build that strategy, help you run through these test scenarios. If you're not big enough for that scenario and you're a mid-sized company, why don't you get a test of your organization? Consider a pen test, right? Consider getting an assessment of your IT, just like you get an assessment of your accounting or your books or your finances. This is assessing your technology and helping understand where's your risk at. Obviously, none of us want to lose data. None of us want to lose any of our constituents' data. And the state also has some wonderful new guidelines on how we have to manage, the data that we're here to protect. So hopefully that's helpful. I went over that really quickly, and I just took a subject. We have competencies in many areas, and this is one that we speak on quite often. But I'll leave it open for some questions. Don't be shy. Beat me up. I get some feedback then. Was this helpful, or was it confusing? Did you not connect with it with the short amount of time that we had? Oh,
So can you just give me a better idea of who your clients would be and what type of like time you would spend with some of these clients?
Great question. Great question. So, in two buckets, if we consider that, our fully managed clients generally are organizations that we fully manage the IT. So they're somewhere around like 26 to 150 users. Um, After that, our co-managed clients, where generally the CIO services implemented, is anywhere from like 125 up to 500 plus users. That is a big, broad spectrum. That's our co-managed competency and where we work in, where we're generally managing maybe just security, managing maybe auditing, or doing the CIO work. The CIO services is billed monthly by time. Generally, it's say, for example, 20 hours of time a month. And it's broken down into us having an executive session with the executive team, meeting or overseeing long-term planning and strategy with the IT department. But it can be molded relevant to where the business is. Does that help answer your question? Yeah, there's vast differences and solutions relevant to the market. We generally are working with organizations that are compliance driven. Our processes are built around compliance. So when we talk about manufacturers, distributors, large law firms, many of them are food-based, so they have compliances or other. We do a lot of work with authorities like water authorities, parking authorities, because they're protecting kind of the data. Medical, that's interesting here in Lancaster County because that's getting consumed into kind of some singular buckets right now. So a lot of specialties, oral surgeons, that type of thing, that are still hanging in there. Renee, was that valuable for you, or can I clarify anything?
Now it gives me a better feel. So which students would be interested in going those kind of
Mm,
ways and
yeah.
where students might find? Mhm.
From a student perspective, and when we kind of bring them through an organization like a university concept, they can come into three buckets for us. Our network operations center, where they're doing proactive maintenance, security, event monitoring. Then we have a service delivery, where they're delivering service and providing solutions, and then an engineering department. So where they have a specificity, say in Microsoft 365 or SharePoint component of that, or a certain security competency, networking. So there's different areas at which we bring students or interns in to kind of grow through the organization.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Do you also do like cybersecurity training for employees?
Great question. So yes, we do. That's actually the number one item that is managed within the NIST, right? Because end users are the most highest impact to cybersecurity at the current moment. So we do deploy that service, and we generally deploy it through HR, and then train HR and implement that through HR. And then we work with them through a certification process. If you utilize security awareness training, you can do an annual certification for your employees, and you can submit that to your insurance as well. And they'll also give you a benefit for that, for having your employees take that. Not just the weekly trainings and testing, but the annual.
Okay. And what is the annual, how long is that training?
It's about 20 minutes. It's
Oh,
self-guided
it's here.
though. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's self-guided with the individual. But then with the security awareness training, you're measuring your highest risk employees. So you can go
Hmm.
in and we're evaluating, hey, listen, Bob, great guy, didn't do any of the training, clicked on 5 of our phishing emails. If this was real, he would have compromised us. And what we do is we work with other organizations that start to put it into policy. If Bob's not willing to do the training, then Bob, unfortunately, um, might be reprimanded for that. Some have
Yeah.
made it as harsh as termination because they understand the risk to their data.
Yeah.
And security awareness training is very cost effective. I mean, for like 100 users for a platform that we utilize is maybe $150 a month. It's not like, for 20 users, it's
Mm.
like, $30 or $40 a month. So it has a lot of impact for the dollar spent.
Do you use because I worked in private equity and
Oh,
they
yeah.
used no was it
Know
no
before.
before? Yeah.
Yeah, Know Before is one of the platforms. We do not utilize Know Before. We do support it when we work with agencies, but we use a agency called Breach Secure Now, which also applies a lot of policy-driven items through the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
Great.
little more cost-effective to the client's wallet as well.
Yeah, so for a small business, um, so what would you recommend for training for a small business of, I don't know, like 3 employees, let's say?
Yeah. Breach Secure Now, the tool that I'm speaking of, is price
Mm-hmm.
per user. So
Mm-hmm.
really cost effective. And I would say that that would be a great tool to utilize as well. It's a scalable tool. So, right, you can just get the module that's necessary for you for, 1 to 3 users.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Interesting. Okay, good.
yeah,
Great.
absolutely. Great
Thank
question.
you.
You're welcome.
I hate to interrupt, but we are at the top of the hour, and I know that folks have some other things that they need to go to. Nick, thank you so much. And please have a look at the chat. I'm going to screen grab the chat really quick, just so that we don't lose it before the meeting is over. Kurt chimed in with some potential mutual interests. We also had a student that joined us today who's graduating in May and is interested in security and thinks that what you
Yeah.
shared today was very helpful. So all great things.
Awesome.
Appreciate you, Nick, for joining us today. Appreciate all of you for taking the time to join us as well. As I mentioned, today's session is being recorded, so we will get that processed and uploaded so that you can refer back to it if you want. But I will also be sending you a follow-up email that will have all of Nick's direct contact information, a link to One-to-One's website, everything that you could possibly need to get in touch with Nick. Or if there's some things that are kind of bouncing around that you need to take some time to form up questions before you're ready to ask them, you can hang on to it and get with Nick whenever you're ready. But I
And
appreciate you.
yeah, you're more than welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email. If you want to do a free assessment, I'm more than happy to do that to give you some empowerment through that education. So let us know. Our team can help you out. Sorry about that.
Nah, you're okay. Thanks very much, everybody. I hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of the day today, and you'll get that follow-up email with me with a link to the video and Nick's contact information in just a couple moments. Have a great day. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you. Bye now.